I'm so excited to meet you.
Me too. Yeah, I've been following you since I started my account. You were one of the first 5 people I followed, I think, honestly. Because I was like, who's doing similar stuff? Who's out there talking about myth and meaning? Your path sounds kind of similar to what I'm trying to do. You know what I mean? I finally bit the bullet and started really putting my face out there and doing all these new posts, and knock on wood, seems to be working. I want to help people with creativity and with understanding their own life through mythic and symbolic lens. And that's a very specific offer that I think a lot of people need, but not a lot of people understand that they need it. So that's where I come in with the education. So hopefully it's going to work, but I imagine you find that too. It's hard to find your people.
Absolutely. And both my mom and my sister are graduates of Pacifica Graduate Institute. So myth and Jungian psychology are in my family. And I love that world. So the vision of this podcast specifically is, one, to make mythology useful, to be able to understand it as it relates to your own life and the world we live in, and then also to elevate mythic voices, people who are doing the academic work. I love your Instagram so much, I can hardly stand it. Your take on things, the way you work with myth, there's always sort of esoterica in the background, but you bring it to the meat and the bones of things. And I think we are really, really aligned in a way that is unusual. We're not all in our heads with academia, but we're also not like super whoa.
Yeah. I feel the same way. I'm serious. I started this Instagram 4 years ago before I really started going hard. And you were one of the first people I followed. I was like, this guy gets it. I'm going to talk to him someday. And then when you reached out, I was like, yes, this is amazing. So I'm so honored. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. I remember when you appeared as Stand Up for the Gods, because I was reading, was it Natalie Haynes who wrote Standing Up for the Gods?
Yes,
and I thought
Stand Up for the
your
Classics.
channel was her.
Yeah.
Stand Up for the Classics.
That's why I ended up changing it. It was too close to her. I love her. She's amazing. But yes.
You were doing still images. You weren't doing reels yet, or I don't remember seeing any reels because I hadn't seen your face. And then you rebranded as Stolen Fires. And I think we've got to talk about that name, Stolen Fires.
What did Prometheus do? Against the will of the gods, he took the fire and gave it to us. And that's a powerful image. And I feel like maybe that's one of the things that myth can be when we properly understand it. It's like that meaning that the gods have for us. The gods in the abstract, like they're part of the myth. I'm not saying we have to believe in anything literal, but I'm saying if we engage with these stories of the gods, there's meaning there. There's fire that we can take and apply to our lives. And one of the hashtags, I don't know anything about social media, I'm learning as I go, but one of the hashtags I started with was practical myth, because I think that's what we need. We need to look at these things not just as silly old stories, but as like lenses we can apply to our life that builds on the wisdom of 5,000 years of stories and tradition. And so that's a big part of it. The other part of the name that I must have done unconsciously, because someone just pointed out that my channel is all about mythology hot takes, Stolen Fires. It's the same thing. And I just was like, I can't even believe I did that. Wow. So that's the longer story.
You touched on something that I don't think gets enough airtime, and that is myth doesn't require you to believe anything. Myths, these stories didn't happen. Getting history and mythology confused is one of the biggest problems in our world today. Mythologizing history or historicizing mythology, it breaks it. One lives in the world of the imaginal and one is the world of the historical. But this idea of Homo sapiens, like storytelling animals, that this fire, this ability to tell a story, this ability to narrate our existence, that's what myth does. I love the idea of myth as fire. And you presented something on Instagram that I had just not been able to get out of my head. You presented this image of Mount Etna with Typhon buried underneath, with Prometheus chained to the side, with Hephaestus working the bellows of the volcano, and with Zeus sitting as the crown on top. And I have never heard anything like that. You used it as a metaphor for the alchemical creative process. And my mind went,
oh man,
like a volcano.
Oh, love to hear it.
Let's play with it. Where did that come from? What was your thought process there?
Yeah, it's kind of a long story. At some point during the pandemic, I just leaned into all my weirdest interests. So I learned a ton about quantum physics and astrophysics and scientific metaphysics and all of that stuff. And I was like, wow, there's a lot here. And it's also incredible how much science actually doesn't know. I love that. Now, that doesn't mean that any woo-woo mystical thing you can come up with can fill those blanks adequately, but I just like holding that tension of we don't know. And I've always loved myth, so I also went on a myth bender during the pandemic. I reread all the Norse myths, I reread a lot of the Greek myths, I got a book on runes. Like all these things just came together, and all the time we had during the pandemic just made it all fit. One of the things that I was fascinated by is Satan. And again, none of this has to be literal, guys. It's okay. Don't get scared. Satan is such a powerful image in our culture. The worst side of monotheistic culture is that we took everything that's not on the list and we pushed it down into this bucket called Satan. And a lot of stuff didn't make the list. So some of it's not all that bad, but to some people, anything that's not underlined in the Bible is just repressed. And I think a lot of the bugs in our culture that we're seeing come from this widespread, long-term, systematic repression of much of human nature. So I'm not a Satanist, I'm not defending Satan, but I'm saying as an image, it's something we need to sit with because it's very rich and has a lot to teach us. And the major qualities that we see in the mythic figure of Satan happen to correspond to a lot of the major qualities of human nature. Kind of interesting. And so that led me to start writing a book. I never quite finished the book, but I wrote this book on the history and the evolution of the image of Satan. And as I was writing this book, which is like 70% done sitting on my hard drive, so someday maybe, but I had a chapter on the Greco-Roman influences on the Satan story. Lucifer is first seen as the name of a Roman deity. Typhon is the adversarial archetype that we see. A lot of that gets pulled in. Even Hephaestus is thrown down from heaven by Zeus. It's similar to the Lucifer story. So there's all this crosstalk there. Long story short, I ended up writing like 4 chapters just on Greek myth. And I was like, oh, hey, I think maybe this is what I should be writing about. And that's where I started seeing those ideas. As someone trained in depth psychology, like Carl Jung's work, I heard about the way Zeus defeated Typhon, and I was fascinated because you would think in these cosmic stories of good and evil, the good god would just obliterate the spirit of discord. But that's not what happens. Typhon is put underneath Mount Etna, and his fiery rage powers that volcano. And then Hephaestus's forge is at the top, turning that rage, alchemizing it into something beautiful. And so I felt that in the myth as I was trying to write this book and work through these ideas and understand, I know these are trying to tell me something. What is it that they're trying to tell me? That's always my question. What does it mean? What does it mean if I hold it a little differently? And so that image of the volcano and then working Prometheus into it too, I'm glad you connected to that image because that's probably what started me on this path, that getting something out of that. That's how it feels to do shadow work, to channel your grief into something creative, to face a part of you that you don't want to face. Like all of those things are in that image, and it's both cosmic and natural and personal all at the same time. But yeah, it's actually what put me on this path. So I'm really glad that one connected for you.
And play with these images a little bit with you, because the other things that connected for me, now you bring in Lucifer, you bring in the adversary, but then Prometheus is very much a Christ figure, suffering for his actions. The image of him chained to Mount Etna is remarkably similar to Jesus on the cross, even the pierced liver. And then Hephaestus is the one who forged Prometheus's chains, but under duress. So he's using the fire of Typhon to forge the chains of the Lightbringer, of the Firebringer, who gives fire to humanity. All of this is under Zeus's direction. And you identify Zeus as a fire god. I'm still thinking of him as an air figure, as an air god, distant, and a mental force that then places these other entities. He traps Typhon. He, in some stories, is the one who lames Hephaestus. He chains or orders the chaining of Prometheus. So he's not the creator of the fire. He's making sure the fire rises to him, and then he can direct it as lightning bolts. So there's this whole creative force. And then you've got his shadow, which is the procreative force, his unbridled lust. And then there you have the downward motion, and this starts to connect to Tantra and chakra cycles. This image seems to have no end.
Yes. Oh, this is so great. I'm so glad we're talking because it's so wonderful to have that perspective. So yes, Zeus is absolutely an air god, but I think he's typically depicted as maybe both. There's certainly a mental aspect to Zeus and the role he plays in our minds, our lives, our bodies, the order of things. And we can come back to that. I think Zeus's order is something definitely worth talking about because there's a reason things are the way they are. But to your point that, let's see, we said Hephaestus is chained. No, Hephaestus is thrown down and lamed, and then Prometheus is chained, and then Typhon is underneath. Zeus didn't destroy Typhon. Zeus integrates Typhon. And because Zeus's order is the most creative option, if we quickly zoom back to the Theogony, we have Father Uranus, the first father. And what does he do? He doesn't let anything be born. He says, oh, these Cyclops is gross. He puts them back into Gaia. He says, oh, these 100-handed giants, gross. He says, no, this cannot be born. Under Uranus's order, nothing can be born. You know, Kronos castrates him and starts a new order. Now we have the Kronos-Saturn order. And what does Kronos-Saturn do? More things are allowed to be out and about, but not everything. It's a very small list of things that are allowed. What does he do? He eats all his babies. He takes them within him, doesn't let them come out. It's another form of order that's too tight, too tyrannical. And so finally, when Zeus overthrows Kronos, Saturn, and frees his siblings and starts a new order, it's the most generative order. This is where everything gets to be born. And that's why Gaia tolerates Zeus, because everyone gets to be born in Zeus's order. And the good news is that means there's a place for everyone and everything, even Typhon, the antithesis of Zeus. If we look at Zeus as like a vision at the top, bringing things together, Typhon is a vision at the bottom with no vision, just discord, pulling everything apart. 1,000 snake heads, 1,000 animal heads, all screaming in disharmony. It's the absolute symbol of the opposite of what cosmic order is. I love it. And we have to have it this way, where Zeus is out and about with all the ladies and out and about with all the animals. It's generative life force, right? It's a metaphor, guys. I know people don't like it sometimes the way they depict Zeus's encounters in Greek myth, and fair enough, some of it's pretty rough, but it's a metaphor for this unstoppable life force. That means sometimes we get monsters. That's the trade-off. If we want everything to be able to be born, that means everything has to be able to be born. Does that make any sense? I feel like that's all part of this.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And something that I've thought about that you've expanded further is the idea of the Olympians. To go back to Uranus, no, he won't let anything be born. And I didn't think of it as a matter of perfection, although you can use that in the creative process. He won't let anything be born, including the Titans, who are supposedly beautiful, shine, glow. But then Gaia then enlists Kronos and says, yeah, no, I need my children to be born. Also, this hurts. You got to get out of here. And so he chops him, tosses his genitals, and then we get Aphrodite from that, which I think is really important. So now we have procreative force in the world. And then Kronos, he rules with his sickle, with his scythe, the iron fist, and it's his rule and no other. Even though the Titans are there, things are allowed to be born, but he won't risk his own power. This is different because he has a concept of the future of his own power. And so he swallows his children. Instead of forcing them into the mother, he takes them in and presumably tries to carve them in his own image. Zeus frees them. But then he says, I'm doing this differently. I'm still the king, but everyone gets a seat at the table. So now you have the idea of the Olympians. I'm going to rule beside my brothers and sisters. And then that pantheon grows. And then to your point, everything gets to be born. There's a place for everything under the sun, including the monsters. And in a sort of theory of mind, if Typhon and Zeus are shadows of one another, Zeus can be this singular focus, the eagle eye, the lightning bolt specificity. Typhon with the 1,000 snakes and it's madness. And so if Zeus is a perfectly ordered place for everything, Typhon is something where there is no order. It's madness. It's a million voices in your head. And what I think is true, I don't know exactly how well this holds up, but the reason Greek philosophy was so important to the culture is there was still some kind of living memory of not having an ordered psyche. Like their minds were different. There was the fear of female orgasm was a big thing. The idea of giving over and losing yourself was a way to madness. And that connects to a way to Typhon. I'm wondering, am I making sense?
Wow, no. It's absolutely very fascinating. I haven't thought of it in quite those terms. I know people talk about that with the different theories of mind, and there's a term for it. Like the modern mind as we know it is actually pretty young, maybe 3,000 years old instead of older, like many people think. But that's an interesting take. I do think that Greek myth and philosophy is always in this constant dialogue of us versus the forces within. And the mind, it evolved late. It's true. We're mostly animals. We're mostly unconscious. We have this little cherry on top that lets us think that we're in charge, but really, come on. And so the forces underneath, that's monstrous. That's Poseidon. That's Typhon. It's all these things that we have to negotiate with and navigate. And the big Greek stories, it's always Athena versus Poseidon. Why? What's up with that? Poseidon's the horse, Athena's the bridle, and Athena's very young. So there's always this like question of, are we civilized? We're trying to civilize. Sometimes they overcorrect when they become overly rational, cruel, Apollonian, Luciferian. Sometimes it's just rational. But sometimes we see also in the Iliad and the Odyssey, people are weeping like 24/7. They were more in touch with their emotions in a way that our culture has completely shut off. So to me, I see this constant tension of opposites. We're so rational, but we have so many emotions. So I think you're right. That kind of goes back to maybe an older way of being and feeling and experiencing the world. But it's endlessly rich. Like you said, they're bottomless. You can just keep looking at it and applying it to different things. Everything from cosmic order to inner states, the psyche, the emotions. Every myth has something to say about most of those layers. It's wild.
It's wild. And you just brought in the Odyssey, which you've been posting a lot about lately. And you've given takes on the Odyssey that have never occurred to me. I read the Odyssey 7 or 8 times in the last decade.
Yeah.
And it's different every time I read it. The first time I read it, I was Telemachus. And now I'm closer to Odysseus. What's alive for you with the Odyssey right now? You read it, so I imagine it's still working on you.
Oh yeah, I'm in it big time. So I've read the Odyssey many times. Right now I'm reading Daniel Mendelssohn's translation, and I recently read Stephen Fry's retelling. I love Stephen Fry. He's a great entry point for people who want to dive in. Very accessible, very readable, not as dense as the actual ancient texts, but still very thorough and symbolically right on. So yeah, I absolutely love the Odyssey. I'm also working with Jason Hawley. He's an astrologer, and he's running a course on the Odyssey that I'm helping out with. It's like an experiential reading of the Odyssey. So we really go deep.
Beautiful.
And we talk about, what does this mean for us? What's the psychology of this? How do we feel into it? And that's been really rich and rewarding for me, because I've thought about the Odyssey my whole life, but it's nice to revisit these ideas now from this different sort of lens. But yeah, the thing that's really alive for me in the Odyssey, it's a few things. Again, you can read it in a psychological way, a cultural way, a religious way, a ritual way. You can read it as the story of a culture finding its identity. You can read it as the story of one man grappling with impossible odds or dealing with his PTSD. There's endless ways to read it that are all applicable. I think good symbolism gives you a lens that's multi-purpose. And I think the Odyssey is just so excellent at that. The big thing that I've been thinking about lately is that it's weird that in the story of the Odyssey, it's Odysseus and his crew of sailors. And in so many of the scenes, we have these sailors, but they're not really characterized at all. They're faceless, they're nameless. They just follow him around, and they're almost like plot devices. And I've been really digging into this idea. It really feels like Odysseus is something like the ego or the consciousness or the intellect, and he's trying to chart a course. He's trying to set a goal. He's trying to do something. And then these sailors keep showing up and doing exactly the opposite of what they're told. When we get to the bag of winds, Odysseus says, don't touch it. It's all the winds that could knock them off course. By a deity, they're given this gift. It's like contained in a bag. It's like, the winds are contained. We're going to make it home in a day or two. Just don't touch the wind bag. And then Odysseus, what does he do? He goes to sleep. And while he's asleep, the sailors take over and they do exactly what they were told not to. They open the bag, and then all the bad winds blow them off course again. So there's tons of examples like this. And again, trained in depth psychology, that really feels like the unconscious at work. You can look at the sailors as these unconscious impulses that challenge what we think we want. And we do this every day. Oh, I should really go to the gym. Oh, I didn't. What's up with that? We think we're rational creatures, but we do not act rationally, certainly not all the time. And so I look at the sailors, one of the ways, by the way, none of these interpretations of anything we're talking about are canonical. They're one angle on an endlessly interpretable thing. But seeing it that way has been useful for me, because there's two angles to this. One, yeah, it's frustrating for the ego. I want to do this, but my unconscious keeps putting up obstacles. What's up with that? Why? But then if you look at it, if you flip it, what is it that the unconscious is trying to tell you? Is it that you don't actually want the thing? Is it that you're not ready for the thing? Is it that the thing would actually put you in a worse place? Is it fulfilling a different need in the wrong way? So For example, everyone's trying to lose weight, right? So let's say I eat a big old bowl of granola before bed every night. And I'm like, oh, I really got to stop doing that. And then next night I do it again, right? So we might say, oh, what's going on there? The unconscious is I need more. The unconscious is there is a lack. The unconscious is I don't have enough. I don't have enough energy. I don't feel resourced. And maybe that's misplaced. Maybe what I really need is sleep. Or maybe what I really need is a break or a vacation. But that's its way of rearing its head and saying, what you think you want is not what we need. And so there's this tension there again, like in the Odyssey, Odysseus never gets back to Ithaca until all the sailors are dead. That's a powerful image. Like in some ways, Odysseus is the worst captain of all time. He's the only survivor. But I think if we look at that less literally and more like a metaphor or pointing toward a deeper layer of understanding, that's maybe necessary, because as the sailors die off, it's Odysseus facing all these different things that he needs to face in order to become the person who can get to Ithaca. And all in the background, there's this tension, this feud with Poseidon. Odysseus, he's a veteran of war. He's been away for 20 years. He didn't see his kid grow up. Everyone he knows has died. They did horrible things in the war. He's dealing with a lot. And I think every time the sailors thwart his progress, it's because there's something he needs to face before he's ready to go back to Ithaca. And Poseidon is the one maybe orchestrating this, not literally, but the things that Poseidon represents, emotion, instinct, unconscious, all those things are rearing their heads because he needs to deal with this. Even the Cyclops, it's a child of Poseidon. We can interpret that as it's something put in front of Odysseus because it's in that realm, that trauma, emotion, sticky, unconscious realm that he needs to face in order to take the next step. So this is a lot, but I feel like they all give you different angles and images to work with here because it's very psychological. And if you start to see it that way, it becomes like a guidepost. Where's that happening in my life? What are my sailors doing? Which gods have I wronged? That's a question that is always useful. Again, don't take it literally, but which gods have I wronged? Which gods am I ignoring? We all do it.
Absolutely. And yeah, to ignore a god or to challenge one head on is generally a recipe for disaster. Hubris in the face of one it's going to get you. These immortal forces are within us. I love this take of the sailors, like of these being the impulses that he has to overcome. You pointed out in another one of your videos, we're getting Odysseus' story from Odysseus. The story of the monsters, the story of the goddesses, the story of every supernatural encounter is Odysseus relating that story to someone else. We get Calypso. And when you go to the etymology, you start thinking about it psychologically, philosophically, this text it's hard for me not to read it as a story of PTSD. It's very difficult to avoid that construct because the man who leaves Troy has no business being in polite society. He cannot rule. He cannot rule Ithaca. He cannot rule himself. He has been taken so far from his center. And the Iliad, Peter Struck, University of Pennsylvania, he has an online mythology course. So you can take UPenn's course. And he talks about the Iliad as being a cautionary tale. Like this is the Greeks talking about war, like the horrors that it can create. It has gone too far, and we must never give over to that again. We must be a better society. And even then, it's a story of ancient history, or it's ancient myth. One thing that's difficult to get my head around is when we talk about ancient mythology, 600 BC, these stories were already ancient. They were oral stories that this tradition, this Homeric tradition, wrote down and sang, recorded. But they were already ancient stories. And the reason they're relevant, the reason we can interpret them in an infinite number of ways is because they are infinitely relevant, personally, socially, cosmologically. I want to get back to this idea of this image of the sailors. It's when he goes to sleep. Odysseus says, don't do this. And then he goes unconscious. And while the prefrontal cortex is offline, restoring itself, the basic impulses come and say, he's keeping it for himself. There's gold in that bag. All of the things that the sailors start telling each other, and then it blows them off course. But some part of Odysseus is not ready to go home.
Yeah.
Knows he cannot go home yet.
Yeah.
I love
I
this.
I
Love this
love that you
take.
brought that up. It's wild. And I think it's applicable. I think it is actually a useful lens. The trick with myths is to not take them literally and to turn them into lenses that you can then look at your own life through. And that's when it starts to really open up. The way the sailors function, in this interpretation at least, is a lot like dwarves in Germanic mythology. These little guys that come out when you go to sleep, and some of them will play tricks on you, or some of them will fix your problems while you're sleeping, or some of them will help you create an artifact. There's a similarity there. You go offline and the dwarves come out. It's something like that. There's another take, though, that I think is actually mind-blowing, is Greek mythology is often fractal. So Odysseus goes to sleep, and then the sailors take over, and they set them off course. There's another myth where, on a different level, maybe a more cosmic level, Zeus goes to sleep, and Hera and Poseidon try to take over. So it's the same concept playing out at a higher octave or a different level of reality in the cosmos, the natural forces, the patterns. Again, let's not take it literally, but let's think about what that might mean, whether in terms of the human psyche, the ordering thing goes to sleep, and then what else? Desire comes up and tries to take over and become the ruler. There's so many ways to interpret that. Natural forces. You can hold it in lots of different ways, but I love that there's just this clear parallel. Like Zeus lets his guard down, and then Hera, Poseidon, and I think Athena come and try to take over. It's very interesting. And that's exactly
I don't know
Odysseus
that
lets his
story.
Yeah, it's only in 2 or 3 sources, but yeah, you can. And I think Thetis is the one who helps. She goes and gets Briareus, one of the 100-handers, our buddies, the Hecatoncheires, and he comes and he like menaces Hera and Poseidon and makes them back down. When it's so interesting because these ancient things like that Zeus, he allied himself with them during the Titanomachy. So like that's playing into it in some way. It's very, some myths, you're like, yeah, that's what that means. Other myths, you're like, whoa, I got to sit with that. They're not always clear, but it's a very powerful myth. I'll try and find the source for you, but it's out there. If you search for it, you'll find it.
I will find it. When you brought that in, given where our conversation started with this idea of Typhon and Zeus placing Typhon being something that he found a use for it. He found a way to channel Typhon's struggle into creativity. And Briareus, the Hecatoncheires, he finds a use for that. He allies himself with a primitive way of fighting. I don't know what this might represent in martial context. I'm thinking he rallied either a cult, some group that he had an agreement with, or some primal part of the self. Zeus leads from above, but Zeus is perfectly willing to get down and dirty to protect the power, to identify with the primal, unformed forces. And now I'm imagining in this prehistory that there's some tribe out there of men who fight from the shadows, who fight with 100
Yeah.
hands coming out of the darkness.
Your
That
images,
would
yeah,
be
that's so, right. A great interpretation of
guerrilla
the
warfare or
Hecatoncheires.
something.
It's not, yeah, it's not one thing. Maybe it's a multiplicity. And I think that's what they represent. You have, what do you have? You have the Cyclopses and the Hecatoncheires. Those are the first children of Uranus and Gaia. You have Cyclopses, one eye, heavenly. They're all named for lightning, thunder, flashing. They're all this idea of the top of the pyramid, the very point, the eye. Monovision, no depth. They're just, this is it. There's one option. Then the flip of that, the next thing that gets born is this just like seething multiplicity of 100 hands and waving arms and 50 heads. And so we're seeing this like navigation, this mediation of extremes and polarity as the world starts to come into focus during the creation. I love that. I think that's another beautiful take on what the Hecatoncheires might mean. Could mean a group, right? The king who allies himself with the natives to beat a rival. That's absolutely something. There are plenty of fruitful historical interpretations too. And I love that we're just blending them all together. Your images are great.
So are yours. And that is the beauty of this, is being able to try on all of these different lenses. And we're still looking at something ineffable through all of these lenses. And somehow doing this conversation that I am in with you, I'm going to think about for hours, days, and probably weeks.
Yeah.
And things are going to keep going click. And this is what myth does that nothing has ever been able to do for me other than myth. We're spending a lot of time in Greek mythology, which is my realm. It's what I know very well. You also seem to be really versed in Norse mythology. You've made connections between the Norse myths and the Greek myths that I have never considered. How did you get there? What was the journey to learning these stories?
There's one little itch I want to say before we totally leave Greek myth. You mentioned Zeus defeating Typhon again. And how does he do it? He integrates him. He subdues and integrates him into the order.
Yes.
We mentioned that Greek mythology is fractal. These stories repeat at different levels. If we look at Hercules, Hercules is a son of Zeus. And what does he do first? He defeats the lion. It's always said, interestingly, that the lion is a son of Typhon. And so here we have Zeus's son subduing the lion, turning him into armor, integrating the lion, and making it part of the order, where he then goes on to defeat other monsters and build more of society. And so that's a fractal recapitulation of Zeus defeating Typhon. And so these structures are there, the functional interpretation of myth. I don't really know what to call it, but these patterns are there. And when you start to see them, you're like, holy cow, so much deeper than everyone thinks.
I love how you're taking this. You have killing the Nemean lion, integrating the lion. That's happening at the mortal level. Zeus is integrating Typhon. The primordials didn't have that. That's what Zeus began. That was the new introduction, is integration instead of separation, instead of castration. Hermes was the grandfather of Odysseus. So you have this liar, you have the mortal liar, and then you have the immortal liar, who is also the messenger. The different shapes of creation. We've talked about that. Also, then once you get into the heroes, you have the same theme show up again and again. Very often the killing of an animal, whether it's the boar or the lion. Sorry, now my mind is going on a quest to find parallels.
Like, have fun with it, because I'm so glad to be talking to you, Boston, because this is, like I said, I saw you online. I was like, this guy gets it. And now this conversation is like everything I hoped and more. So I'm loving this. We're doing it.
Right on. I want to shift this conversation to more about you and what this work is for you. You talked a little bit about your background and the 2020 and pursuing all of your wonderfully weird interests, which that's also where this began. This part of the work began for me. I suddenly had a bunch of time to write. So I wrote a bunch of articles about myth. The videos that you produce is a lot of work. It may not look like it on the completion end, but I know what it takes to put those out, to edit them, to put them out almost every day. Why are you doing this? What is possessing you to bring this to the world when I'm sure you have other things in life to do as well?
That's a really wonderful question. It's almost like a challenge. It's like, why? There are a lot of reasons. Where to start? I think most people have a lack of meaning in their life. And I think it comes from taking everything super literally, super scientifically. Science is amazing. I love science. I love science just as much. I'm not saying that myth and woo is good and science is bad. No, science is incredible. But each one is a lens, and each one can give us meaning. The work of Ian McGilchrist describing the differences in brain hemispheres, it fits perfectly. You can map his theory onto the fall of Lucifer myth perfectly. I'm going to do a video on that someday. Like, it's right there in front of us. Our culture just pushes us to one style of being that isn't bad, but it's excessive now. It maps really well to Athena consciousness versus Poseidon consciousness. But Poseidon is the lower, the holistic, what is the ocean? It's just one big thing made of waves, made of drops. It's one big thing all at once. Whereas the rational Athena is the polis, the civilization, the craft. It's like that left brain. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's important and it's beautiful. It's done so much, but our balance is a little off. I'm 38, and I got to say, a lot of my friends are really depressed. And I think it comes from a lack of meaning and a lack of being able to orient your life or look through a lens that doesn't just end with, it doesn't matter. We're just a speck on a speck in a speck near a speck. That is true. And it's also not true because we have multiple ways to look at it. So if you only have one way, that's your only option. But if you have other lenses, then you can start to interpret things. Your life can be symbolic. I know it probably sounds really woo, but I don't mean it in that way. But if you learn to see your life a little bit like you can see myth, you start to see patterns, you start to ask different questions, and then that can help you grow. So I think that's what keeps me coming back. And I think from my first band when I was 14, I called it Animus because I was into Carl Jung. So I've been drinking the Kool-Aid for a long time. I've always thought about these things, and I've always had this intuition that there's more here. Even religion, take apart the religious part. I'm not saying you need to have any dogma or belief, but Genesis is awesome. Symbolically, you can read that myth a zillion different ways and apply it to your life a zillion different ways and learn so much more about yourself by using that as a lens. We got Adam and Eve and the serpent. That story is endless. You don't have to believe anything. You don't have to dogma anything. You can just play with the story and look at it in this. They're like gems with facets. Depth psychology people say that a lot, but it's so true when you can look at your life through that. And so I have found it to just be like, not only just endlessly interesting, like you mentioned, like you can just keep going. They seem to be endless. There's not like a limit. Oh, I figured it out. That doesn't happen. So this is just so interesting. It's so enlivening. I get excited about it. Wow, that just happened. Or wow, your pattern is playing out just like freaking Odysseus. That's incredible. You start to see it and it makes life more alive, more meaningful. And if anything I do can help people be a little more meaningful in their own life or a little more creative. Creativity is a big part of what I do. And I think it's the same idea. Creativity is our one big way to install meaning in our life as well. And so I connect these, and that's part of what I do in like my consulting and things like that. But I think it's really important. At the end of the day, it's like, it lights me up. I think it's so fun to think about all the time. And I think it helps make life better and more interesting and more meaningful. So I don't think I could stop if I wanted to.
Your model where you started with Poseidon and Athena as the hemispheres is a really interesting juxtaposition or balance. One way I think about it is using McGilchrist, because there's something about myth that satisfies both hemispheres. It can be applying a rationalist viewpoint to a non-rational story. It's like it sits at the corpus callosum instead of it being left or right. It's like a gateway to the right hemisphere, in my way of thinking. You put a myth and it's that creative spark, and you use that word vitalizing. There's a vitality available through myth, through this Promethean fire, and it sits there. And it's this thing that most people pass by a myth and they go, oh, there's a story, I'm not interested. It's a fairy tale, it's fiction, blah, 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 blah. It's a myth, it's a lie. Like myth, the irony of the word myth meaning both a lie, a falsehood, and also something that contains truth. That is so perfect. That is such a perfect description of a myth. And I forget, Jean Shinoda Bowen quotes Jung, I think, and she's saying that a myth is a story that's never happened, but is always happening. And so when we stop and we look at a myth and we go, wait, this story is happening now. How is it in my life? How is it in the world around me? It activates that need, that ability to make connections that are non-rational. It opens us into the realm of interconnectivity, comprehension instead of apprehension. Right. And
yeah,
the fire of myth is vitalizing. And this is why I started using it in my coaching, is being able to share a story, a myth with someone, and they see themselves in the myth and suddenly they're a part of something bigger. Suddenly, yes, a story from 3,000 years ago is resonant with them, and it's not part of their religion, so they don't have a bunch of preconceived stuff around it, and they can, there's no baggage. They just get to be with the story. So I guess this is a lot of words to say, I share your mission. Like, that's what this can do in its cleanest form.
Yeah, no, so well said. Thank you. And that's exactly, I think, what we're both trying to do. And it is deeply therapeutic. Just think about it for 2 seconds. We are animals who evolved to do this. We have to assemble in rituals. We don't have to take ritual literally. It's a tool for interfacing with the non-lingual parts of our psyche, which, by the way, is most of it, because language evolved very late. So only the cherry on top can handle language. So the ritual, image, symbol, they're all techniques for getting to the lower parts of us. Because if you notice, all of our symbolism goes back to nature. That's what we evolved in. That's what made us what we are. It works for a reason. It actually is very coherent, and you don't have to take any of it literally. So there's that. And you reminded me of a different Jung quote. It's called or not, the gods are always present. And so that is what we're doing. There's a therapeutic aspect to this because you can deny the meaning of myth. You can deny that these stories have anything of value, but you're still going to act in the patterns that the myths describe, even if you don't realize it. And so I really think that's worth people meditating on because it's really true. You can see there's a reason all of the great psychoanalysts got a lot of their ideas from myth. It's because it describes human patterns. And so, yeah, I could go on forever. I love this stuff. And I think it is important. And there's anything that gets you a little bit out of your left brain, a little bit more into your right brain is healing. I'm sure you're familiar with Lisa Miller. She wrote that book. Oh, what is it called? I don't know. She wrote a book on how basically the part of your brain that turns on depression is the same part of the brain that turns on spirituality. And so
I'm not familiar with this. No, this is new.
Oh, yeah. It's The Awakened Brain, Lisa Miller. And so it doesn't mean religious. It doesn't mean dogma. It doesn't mean literal believing. But if that spiritual part of your brain is activated, it becomes physiologically impossible to be depressed. How mind-blowing is that? And how sad is that? Because people hear that and they're like, yeah, it must be nice, but I don't believe in anything. You don't have to. You just have to shift your perspective a little tiny bit. And it's fun. This is actually useful. So yeah, so that's my soapbox. Sorry.
I love your soapbox. And I just read Martha Beck's Unwinding Anxiety, and she's talking about anxiety and creativity. It is impossible for anxiety to exist in the presence of being creative. But one mechanism shuts off the other. And that maps perfectly to spirituality and creativity go together. Creative thinking, like thinking isn't it. It's creative experience, it's creative exploration, it's spiritual experience. The idea of spirituality as a reconstruction of the world in a non-rational way. That there's something, and non-rational may not be exactly it, but it's not about solving a problem. It's not about breaking things apart. It's about seeing things in a new way.
I almost like irrational. Like it's not rational. It's not irrational. It's just like it's apples and oranges.
Irrational. I like that.
I don't know if that's correct, but that's what I say. That might not be a word.
I've used non-rational to avoid irrational. This has to be experiential.
Yeah.
This work has to be experiential. It has to happen in conversation. It has to happen in the freedom to be wrong, because you can't be. You just have to be willing to go and sort of, and what we end up with is, I've never thought of that before. It's not wrong. It might not be as resonant for me as it is for somebody else. That's not my business. If it brings you alive, that's the point. That's the point.
And like you said, it may not even be resonant. But again, are we Odysseus or are we the sailors? Like the sailors they're going against Odysseus's will. But I think Odysseus has to do all the things that the sailors cause in order to actually get where he's going. So I'm not giving everyone a pass to just do whatever their impulses say, but there's a wrestling there. There's a dialogue happening. So I think you're spot on. You're right in it.
When your point too, like those are both different parts of the psyche. It's not about what one is doing and another is not. Like the psyche is doing this. This is a wrestling match that's happening between layers and levels of consciousness. In one of your videos, you talk about Odysseus getting off the island of Calypso, and that Calypso, he's not with a woman, he's in the arms of the goddess. He's sleeping with death. He is sleeping. This is depression. He's deep in depression and he cannot get himself to move. And so Zeus sends Hermes to say, Calypso, you got to let him go. Like it's time, like he needs to get on the road. This is his psychic process. It's okay, I've done all of this I can do. I still can't go home, but I can get off this island. And what does he do? He builds a boat. He gets busy with his hands, creativity. He's a craftsman and he starts making something. And that's how he gets off the shore. The way off the island is through creativity.
I fully believe that. That's probably 50% of what I do is creative work and creative consulting. And I don't see it as different from this work. Depending on the receptivity of the person I'm working with, I'll bring in more or less of the archetypal or the mythic or the occult. But I think it doesn't matter. They're playing from the same thing. What's the core message of Genesis? We create like God creates because we are in God's image. We're the only animals that have a say in our own nature. That's pretty significant. We are creative beings.
Here. If somebody comes to you, if somebody goes to your website and they hire you as a coach, what might an engagement look like? What does it look like to be coached by you?
What's really important to me is meeting someone where they are. So if they come to me and say, hey, I've been really depressed, that's a totally different process when they say, hey, I'm blocked creatively. And if they come to me under the hood, those things might actually be the same, but you have to meet it where the person is ready to talk about it. I used to work in Salem as a tarot reader because it was one way to get people who wanted to look at the symbolic. Again, you don't have to take it literally. It's the cards don't have to be magic for them to be useful lenses to apply to your life. So I really will try to meet the person and understand who they are. One angle I like to take is myth work. Okay, what is your personal myth? And a lot of people are like, oh, I don't know. And that's fine. So tell me about some of the major episodes of your life. What are the 3 best things that ever happened to you? What are the 3 worst? What's a story from your childhood that you cannot let go? So with this work, it takes a while. It can be in depth, but I try to help people see aspects of their self and their lives in the more mythic symbolic lens. And then we apply it to whatever they're going through. Oh, I've been depressed. Oh, I'm looking for a job. Oh, I want to finish this album. Oh, I want to redo my website. I've seen people with all sorts of stuff. Oh, I want to leave my husband. Oh, I'm trying to get pregnant. I've helped people with not literally that last one. I did not help them get pregnant in that sense, but maybe in the other sense. Yeah. Yeah. So I just try to hey, there's a whole way of seeing that we have together in this container. Let's apply it to what's important to you. Let's help you learn a little more about yourself, see the world a little differently, and then tackle your problem or your goal a little differently. And it's been really fun. It's really fruitful when it works. And in my personal life, I'm a creative. I teach at a college for game design. I am a lifelong rock musician. So I'm very tapped into the creative process and all the good and bad that comes with it. Talk about anxiety and creativity occupying the same circuit. I've never heard it said literally, but I've sure as heck felt it. And so so any way I can be creative, or more importantly, help other people bring that creativity into their lives in a way that's vitalizing and therapeutic. Let's do it.
And you have a course coming up that's focused on this in May. What is it that you're doing in May?
Yeah, so I am doing a course on mythology and creativity. So we talked about some of these today. There's patterns in myth if you learn to see it. And if you learn to pick them out in the right way, they can give you the leg up or new lens to look at your life. So what the course does is it goes through 8 different myths. It's an 8-week course. So we do 1 myth a week and we interpret it as a group. I offer a few suggestions and then the group kind of runs and we discuss it. And we pick out the patterns that can apply to the creative process. A good example is the Theogony, Uranus and Gaia, the tension between heaven and earth. Heaven wants things to be perfect. Earth wants things to be what they are. The idea and the actual, the theory and the practice. You can do it a million different ways. But there's always this tension, and the perfection of what heaven wants has to be cut off in order for the thing itself to come forward. And I don't know about you, but in my creative work, perfectionism is a constant thing I have to navigate. And that's the tyranny of heaven. That's heaven wanting it to be so perfect, it can't actually exist. And so it has to get cut off so that the thing can actually come into being. Any version of something is necessarily not every version of something. And that sounds so obvious as to almost be a throwaway, but it's exactly the mistake we make as creatives all the time. So that's one example of what we might do week 1. And then, so we have a discussion about that and everyone is encouraged to bring something they're working on in any state of idea or draft or just total chaos mess. Because I'm trying to, for myself, just as much as students as well, but I'm trying to normalize this idea of creativity is messy. It's gross. You don't want anyone to see it. What's therapeutic? Letting them see it. So this idea of taking the mess you're working on and making it sacred. So the second half of the classes will be sharing the creative work and offering different angles and seeing opportunities for people to request feedback. It's a very helpful, supportive environment where we ask questions and give reflections and tie it back into the myth. I'm really excited about it. I'm working on a book. At this rate, it'll be done in 2029, but I'm working on a book about this very thing, looking at the myths, interpreting them deeply, and putting it in practical terms for your life and your creative work. So it's very alive to me right now, and I'm trying to put it into practice as I try to finish an album. So I'm right there in the trenches with everyone else.
Right on. And if somebody wants to get a hold of you and learn more about the course or more about working with you, what's the way to do that?
Yeah, my website is stolenfires.com. And so every link you need is there. You can sign up for the mailing list and I'll be updating about the course there. And I've got YouTube and Instagram and TikTok and all the things. I would love to meet people there and chat about this stuff.
Obviously, all of those will be in the YouTube description and in the show notes to make it really easy for people to find. I love the work that you're doing. I truly, depths of my soul, appreciate what you
Thank
are
you.
bringing to the mythic conversation. I think while we've been talking, your Instagram has gained another 150 followers. It's 1,000 new people a day right now. It's really exciting to see you growing like this.
Thank you. You're not kidding. And it's a very weird, overwhelming feeling. And I'm really grateful and excited. And I'm just like, okay, like, let's keep this momentum. I got to keep the hot takes coming.
Is there anything we haven't hit today? We are definitely going to have more conversations. This is a truly extraordinary chemistry, I feel.
Yes.
And I want
Yes,
to
thank you.
talk so much more with you. But at least for this one, what have we not hit on that you really want to bring to the table?
I don't know. I feel like that was pretty good. I think we landed it. It's endless. The whole point was that this stuff is life-giving and it's endless. So I really do hope we have many more conversations, because we almost talked about the Norse myths. And I think, you know what, we'll do that next time. Maybe that can be our starting point for the next one, because there's so much there.
Right on. Thank you so much for spending the afternoon with me, or morning with me, afternoon for you. This has been, to say it's been a delight, understates it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Boston. I truly, again, I've been excited about this for a long time. So I'm really glad we finally made it happen. And it's great to just speak with a like-minded, kindred archetypal spirit. So we're here.